Chamath Palihapitiya just drew a comparison between OpenAI and MySpace. That is not a company you want to be compared to.
All right, first up on the docket, a code red has been called by Sam Altman. He sent a memo on Monday, told employees to stop working on side quests, like ads, etc., and focus on the core, ChatGPT, the core experience, make it faster, make it better. And I think we all know why. Because Gemini and Grok and Claude from Anthropic have been crushing it. ChatGPT 5, let's call it what it is, was a bit of a flop. It didn't perform to expectations. We discussed that a couple of weeks ago or months ago. Anthropic is beating OpenAI in enterprise revenue starting this summer. And I talked about how, previous episodes on the streets, I'm seeing more startups want to use Anthropic's API and also Google Gemini's API, and they don't essentially trust OpenAI to not steal their business. So it's big changes right now. Here is a chart based on data from July. Most of Anthropic's revenue here is corporate. Most of OpenAI's, as everybody knows, is consumer. And here's another chart, OpenAI's new infrastructure deals versus revenue. And this is just for 2025 alone. A lot of deals being made, but competition is fierce. Chamath, your thoughts here on the game on the field? Code red, for people who don't know in our industry, is when everybody reports to the office and gets focused on one thing. And that's apparently what Sam's doing. How do you interpret it?
Look, I think that there are two things. Let's do the strategic lens and then the tactical lens. The strategic lens is that this is an incredibly vibrant and dynamic market. And I think it's too difficult and too early to pick winners other than at the silicon layer, where largely that die has been cast. I think that it's going to grow, so we can talk about how there'll be more competition, but it's roughly NVIDIA plus AMD plus Google plus a bunch of inference silicon. So that's sort of that market. But above it at the model market, it reminds me, frankly, a lot of when we were building Facebook. I remember sitting around our senior executive team, 6 of us, looking at MySpace, who was an order of magnitude bigger than us. And at some point we were like, you know what? Our product is just fundamentally better than theirs. And they had 100 million plus users and we had sort of 15, but we knew that we were eventually going to beat them. Nobody else knew. And I feel like this market is similarly evolving, which is that you have these early winners, but there's still so much work to do. There's still so many consumer expectations to define that it's too early to know who's going to win. And ultimately, what we are learning, especially as all these markets converge, is that distribution still matters a ton, which favors Google. It favors Meta, although Meta's quite behind. And now it will still favor OpenAI because they have 800 million monthly actives. So then the tactical thing is, what do you do, knowing that this dynamic is set up to have a lot of competition? And I think what you have to do is streamline the focus and try to make a crisis out of every opportunity. Because look, the companies tend to just grow. This positive entropy tends to cause people to hire at every level. And you look around and there's thousands of people that you didn't know even 6 months ago. And so I think if Sam can use different points in time to tighten the core focus, they'll be better off. And I think that is what Google did a while back. If you remember the whole Black George Washington thing, they were able to use that as a rallying cry to streamline the organization and to focus and to get their best and smartest people to work on the most highly leveraged tasks. And what you see now is an incredible overperformance from where they were. I've said this before, but Gemini is incredible. So I think that that's what's happening. Too early to call. It's a 3 or 4 horse race. And Sam needs to batten down the hatches. And I think he used this opportunity to stop a bunch of peripheral activities.
Yeah, and as we saw, Sergey called a personal code red. He said, I have to get in the office. I have to inspire everybody because this is existential for us if we lose the search franchise, which they haven't. The code red works. So David Freeberg, maybe you could discuss a little bit. Code red as a management technique. You were at Google. I don't know if they were calling code reds back then because you didn't have any competition, but we're in a much different world here. This is the most competitive thing we've ever seen in our lifetimes, I think.
Google had an early lead in search, and then Microsoft launched, and it formed a code red model at Google that was called Project Canada as the code word for Microsoft. And there was a weekly war room meeting and a whole bunch of strategy and product decision making that was driven around the impending threat from Microsoft, because Microsoft was such a big behemoth, so well capitalized, had incredible engineering talent. Part of the response was to set up an office in Kirkland, to recruit engineers up in Seattle, to aggressively grow that base. There was a whole bunch of tactics that emerged from the strategic lens of Project Canada. It is a very powerful method. It is how the United States got to the moon in a race with Russia. It is how we are now in a race for supremacy in technology and AI against China. Having an impending threat is a very strong motivational tactic. It is a very focusing setting, and it drives innovation. And so we'll see what happens. ChatGPT was basically the market monopoly in AI or LLM chat interface, and it only had one way to go, which was down. Google, I think at this point, has roughly 14%. So here you can see OpenAI is on the decline. Obviously, a little over a year ago, they were at 90% plus market share in generative AI traffic. And today, Gemini is at 14, 15%. The depth, the flywheel that Google has built gives them such extraordinary advantage.
Chamath makes a terrifying comparison to MySpace, but the real history lesson here is Netscape. OpenAI had a great start, but Google is at risk of crushing them with the oldest trick in the book, the bundle. The All-In Boys highlighted a scary trend. OpenAI's dominance has slipped from 90% down to 70%, while Gemini has surged to roughly 15%. This isn't just happening because Gemini is better, it's happening because as of late 2025, Google's integrated Gemini directly into Workspace, putting it in front of billions of users without them lifting a finger. So to understand why Sam Altman is terrified, you have to look at the history of the first web browser war in the 1990s. Netscape Navigator was the better browser. It was beloved by the tech elite, just like ChatGPT is today, but Microsoft owned Windows. They bundled Internet Explorer into every single PC for free. Even though Internet Explorer was arguably worse, it won because it had zero friction. Most people are lazy, they use what's already on their screen. OpenAI is currently fighting a war against friction. To use ChatGPT, OpenAI has to convince you to download the app or go to their website. Google has removed all friction. Gemini is now a side panel in Google Docs, a smart button in Gmail, and a search bar on Android. This is creating a massive economic advantage for Google in the form of CAC, customer acquisition cost. OpenAI has to spend millions of marketing dollars to convince you to come to their site. Google has a CAC of zero. They don't have to acquire you, they already own you via Android and Chrome. This means Google can afford to bleed money on AI indefinitely, treating it as a loss leader just to protect their search monopoly. OpenAI, on the other hand, is in a race to get to profitability to survive. So Sam Altman's Code Red is admission that they cannot win a fair fight against a free bundle. They have to make a product so undeniably magic that people actively choose to pay the friction tax to use it, a nearly impossible task when the easier alternative is being good enough. And looking at recent data, Gemini 3 is even proving itself to be better than ChatGPT. This brings us on to the scariest difference between the two companies. Google is fighting for market share and extra profit, but OpenAI is fighting for its literal survival. And that desperation changes the strategy completely. David Friedberg explains that a code red is the only way to strip away the laziness of peacetime and to force your company into wartime survival mode. And David compares this to Google's own Project Canada, which was a code word set up to fight Microsoft's dominance in the 2000s. He says that having a clear existential threat, like Russia in the space race, is the only thing that drives real innovation. Rumors have started to emerge that OpenAI has cancelled side-quest projects like their ad network and hardware devices to reallocate every single engineer to the core model. In biology, the Red Queen hypothesis states that you have to run as fast as you can just to stay in the same place. That is exactly what is happening to OpenAI. In the software world, if you build a great product like Excel, you can relax for 10 years and collect the checks. In the AI world, your products rot incredibly fast. GPT-4 was a god-tier genius when it launched. 6 months later, it was average. 12 months later, open source models were matching it for free. This is a commodity trap. Intelligence is becoming like electricity, a commodity where the only thing that matters is who is the cheapest. So a code red is a management tool designed to break this cycle. It creates a singular threat focus, By declaring a crisis, Sam Altman is effectively telling his team, if you're working on anything that doesn't beat Gemini, stop immediately. It gives him the political cover to fire underperforming teams and cancel vanity projects without debate. The reason this code red is so intense is because the risk is asymmetric. If Google loses the AI war, they still have many other successful businesses like YouTube and Android. They have a safety net. If OpenAI loses the AI war, they go to zero. They have no other product to fall back on. This means OpenAI must be desperate. Friedberg's point is that the desperation is actually a superpower. History shows that companies fighting for their lives, like SpaceX versus Boeing, usually move faster than companies fighting for a bonus. If I could recommend one place to start learning AI, it would be the course I put together. It's clear, structured, and designed for beginners who want to get genuinely knowledgeable on the space. You'll get lifetime access to all lessons, including future modules, and just a heads up, the price rises as more modules are added, so it's currently at the lowest price you'll see. Link in the description below. One of our clients started with 0 audience. Now they're doing $100,000 months thanks to YouTube. And they're not alone. We've helped 3 businesses hit that level just by growing them a YouTube channel. Want to see how this could work for your business? Book a call with me below.